powering trusted identities of the world's people, places, and things. Every day, millions of people in more than 100 countries use our products and services to securely access physical and digital places. Over 2 billion things that need to be identified, verified, and tracked are connected through HID Global's technology.
Hello again, everyone. All right. Today is our last session, Janette, with you. So thank you for being such a good member of this little triumvirate, so to speak, we have going on here. Darwin, as always, good to see you. Looking very dapper today. We're going to chat about some hot topics. Janette actually teed it up in the last session. If you watched that one, we're going to talk through a couple of fun things today. This will be the third session with Janette. We are going to continue these with Darwin and myself and bring in some other participants. So today, as per the usual, just to make sure everyone's on the same playing field here, we are talking about PIM, Physical Identity and Access Management. It is all about making sure an organization is understanding who, a person, where they are, why they get there, who gave them access to that location, how long they get to be there, all of these things. And it's for a variety of different people. So we're not focused on devices or anything, but people. Today's topics, we're going to start with integration. We're going to move on to risk. And then we're going to talk about everyone's favorite 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 letter word, audit. Should be fun. So, Janette, let's get started. We have talked about visitor management. We've talked about access control. In the access control discussion, we talked a little bit about integration, but not a ton. That's kind of a very specific integration for us. So let's move the scope. When you're talking to customers and you're thinking about integration, what are some of the things that you have seen come up in those discussions that you would suggest people think about first? Like where to start with this discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. The way that I pretty much view this and the discussions that we're having is really looking about, at setting priorities around what's most important to the client, what's going to deliver the most value, return on investment, and kind of like, I guess you would say follow the 80-20 rule. You don't want companies to be overwhelmed with what integrations to start with and, confuse staff and operators with new processes all at once. So, when you are looking at integrations, looking at, where are the identities coming from that you're looking to secure? If we're looking at employees, maybe they reside in AD or Workday. When we're looking at contractors, maybe those are being pulled in from another source. Is it something that could be imported via CSV file, or do you need a true integration there? Maybe that's SAP or Workday as well. So those would, we would look at integrations. And then I know we talked a lot around physical access control in our last session. So if we are looking to actually give physical badges to those folks, and you want to have that integrated, then we'd be looking at, what is that access control system? And a good point on that is, a lot of the organizations that I'm talking with have multiple PAC systems, and eventually they're looking to standardize. So let's look at, which ones need to be a priority now, and the ones you're looking to eliminate, let's not worry about integrating with those today. And it varies from business to business. We work with a lot of hospitals.
Yeah.
And so some of the integrations that we hear about there are, in a children's hospital specifically. They might be looking at integrating with a sex offender list, third-party watch lists. So that could be key for them, as well as their identities aren't going to be based around Workday or anything like that, because what they're most concerned about is, the visitor coming in to see a patient. So they're more concerned about following that patient to different locations, rooms that may change, and drill it down to that level. So they would be looking at integration with Epic or Cerner. And then a large multinational organization might be looking at third-party watch lists as well to vet who's coming in and out. So as I sit here and talk about this, there's a lot of different integrations that we can provide with SAFE, but again, you don't want to get too overwhelmed from the beginning. Start basic, and it's something you can always add, looking at what's most valuable to the client.
Yeah, so I'm hearing kind of three groups that you often see as good starting points. Those are an identity system of some sort, kind of depends on whether it's healthcare or not. Probably a watch list if it's an organization that's needing to know who's coming, whether they're on a predator list or whether they're on a denied entry or something like that list. And then access control is obviously, in many cases, a very key and early one there. Darwin, when you think about integration, the word value to you means what? What are you thinking of when you think of value from an integration standpoint?
So higher level, I will give the tactical perspective of what we have covered. So, like for example, when you are choosing a single source of truth, what are you trying to get? What's the benefits that you're getting? What's the value? The time to value there would be the reduction in the amount of data entry errors. Why? Because instead of having to manually enter that identity and create that identity, you can reach back to Active Directory, to that HR system, reducing the time for the identity to be created on the system. That has follow-on effects, because now what? Now you get the efficiency that you have that identity in your system, and then you can automate the granting of access privileges to that person, so that they don't have to be waiting around for somebody to where do you need to be configured in the physical access control system. You can automate that credential creation so that when the user, comes on, day one, they have all the access that they need. And if there's any additional, higher sensitive areas that they need to access, you could have the process started for them to be granted. But you're not sitting around for somebody for going to the physical access control system and set up Janette with their access. Now, the other part of it is that you have the ability of achieve compliance. So be it by sex offenders list or denied third party screening. So if you have an international company, having that proof that you are actively making sure that you are not doing business or no denied parties are coming into place. At a technical level, that's where the integrations come in, and that gets you to that 80-20 value. Just because you can integrate it, that doesn't mean that it's a good idea to integrate.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes the challenge sometimes is that we have too many options.
Yes.
And your operators, your IT department, they get overwhelmed because there's only so many hours in the day. So when you are looking at the technical level, you want that single source of truth to reduce the amount of time that it takes to onboard that identity, reduce your data entry errors, and automate. That is a big time saver, because you not only automate the creation, you can, through the integration, you automate the creation of the identity, but you also can automate the granting of those clearances and access to that person, so that somebody is not waiting, 1, 2, 3 days for their access to get enabled.
Yeah. And just a quick aside on the, we've talked about third-party watch lists, which does imply an integration. Even within SAFE, there's an internal set of watch lists. So a set of watch lists that can be created and dispersed across whoever has access. And I think that's even an important one, because then you're integrating a tool into your workflows. And there it's not always even just security. It might be Darwin's coming, every time Darwin's on site, we need to make sure that we escort him to the, straight back to the room he's going to, and it's either a security thing, it might be an experience thing, white glove experience for a VIP, it might be making sure that whoever it is going directly to the area because maybe they're an auditor, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and you want to make sure that they have what they need. And so those internal watch lists, I think, are also helpful because integration is not just about two systems. You're integrating for a process that will ultimately be affected by this, as you were kind of talking about from a data entry standpoint. So I think the other thing you mentioned, don't integrate too much. I think that's an important one because that actually starts us on our next topic a little bit here, which is risk. And sometimes when we are creating too many systems and connections with other systems, the risk profile will go up. It's a little bit kind of a different risk. This is one you and I've talked about. It's more of a technology related risk where you're creating something that's potentially a little more brittle. If I have 45 connections and I'm trying to keep up with 45 connections in multiple versions of software, and how are all these things slinging about, that can lead to some operational risks that a team needs to think about. So again, back to don't boil the ocean. Boiling the ocean can lead to some downstream effects that might be bad. Now, at the same time, within our system, we've got a few things, tools, reports, things like that can help with risk. So open question to either of you. What's your favorite part of the system that helps with risk? Don't go at once now.
Well, for me, the topic of risk is near and dear to my heart because I have been working around risk for some time now, and for me, the solution it allows you to take a layer approach to risk because there are several dimensions of risk, and sometimes people will think of risk in negative terms, but the risks can also have positive effects. For example, focusing on providing a elevated experience for your employees, for your visitors. Back to the example that Matthew was telling earlier about, you can use the watch list, which normally will have some type of back annotation because you will associate it with an party screening, you associate it with that disgruntled employee or a sex offender, but you can also use it to identify VIPs, so that if you have, say, a case of like a government entity, you have a protocol office that you have a VIP coming and there's Darwin is coming, make sure you have purple peanut M&Ms available for him. So that's the type of thing that you can leverage the system, and that's a positive risk. On the other side, you can also reduce your compliance risk. Why? Because you're capturing the data that if you have a surprise inspection or some type of audit, you can come in and you can readily prepare a report or call in a report that can give an auditor some semblance of how you are applying your controls, especially around the 9-party screening would be a good example. Other things would be we have a module called attestation that it basically helps us maintain hygiene of our physical access control systems. One of the things that in the years that I have worked on the industry, organizations have struggled with maintaining the access within their physical access control systems. Why? Because people come in and go, and you might have granted the access, but there's no easy way to go back and revoke that access when it's no longer needed. A solution around physical identity access management allows you to automate, or at least if you don't automate it by setting boundaries on the start and end dates of home access, you can also layer another module like attestation, where somebody that is responsible for an area on a regular basis goes in and just looks at the list of people that have access, and they verify that the persons that have access granted are still in the need of that access. And if not, the process, you have that control that can help remove that access from somebody that no longer needs it.
I think that's an interesting point. You're using tools to turn the processes related to risk into something that actually are an efficiency gain, a productivity gain in many ways within the organization, but then also helping address the annual audit, the quarterly audit, in a more proactive way. So turning something that could be arduous and long and drawn out if it's done manually or without the system into something that is, I won't say seamless, but it's certainly less arduous.
Well, I mean, it's about removing friction from controls that you have to apply. And one theme that I always like about solutions is that they can be considered a force multiplier, because instead of having to gather data from multiple locations or doing an audit of your whole physical access control system, you can divide it into chunks so that you can have somebody that is responsible for controlling access for a specific area, and you don't have to audit all your areas. You can focus on those areas that require that additional touch. So again, the 80-20 rule, looking at the areas that you really need to protect by managing your risk, making sure that you're addressing those risks of still having people with access that should not have access, and having, help the organization achieve the discipline to sanitize and maintain the health of your access control system without having to go through 10,000 access clearances. You can just focus, I'm just going to look all the folks that have access to my data center or my communications closet or the disbursement office or finance. And just look at it in a way that you focus on the areas that you know where your risks are. And the risk profile of each organization is gonna change over time. Some others, for example, let's say in a children's hospital, you want to make sure that you keep access to your maternity ward or your neonatal unit controlled. So making sure that you have that discipline of going in, and you don't have to worry about the access to the whole hospital. You just look at your neonatal unit or your ICU or any areas, like for example, where you have your controlled substances, access to those cabinets. There's a lot of electronic locks today that you can kind of works the similar way that your physical access control system works. So you can also use that to audit access to your controlled substance cabinet and
and I think that also ties in a little bit. You mentioned government or even government adjacent critical infrastructure, those that are going to be held to certain standards around least privilege, or everyone's favorite zero trust related and adjacent topic. We won't go there, don't worry. But the point is, you can now begin to extend some of those, I'll call them frameworks and thought patterns, into this space a little more proactively. You can audit access to ensure least privilege, and make sure you're kind of thinking of it that way too. And I actually think you started to bring up something that you maybe can show us here in a second, so I might flip it over to you. As we're starting to look at this, you started to describe what sounded to me almost like a 10-100, or I think that's what they're calling it in aviation, where they do an audit of 10% of the population of X or something like that. So back to your example, if there are 10,000 records, they may only do, oh gosh, now I got to do math live, 1,000 records for the 10-100. But it is a proactive approach that I think an enterprise could use too, particularly those that do need to think about governance adherence or any sort of other regulations. So I'll leave it over to you to maybe bring some slides up. But Janette, while Darwin's doing that, anything kind of strike you want to add there?
No, I think Darwin's done a pretty good job of bringing it all together and touching on the last three topics that we've talked about over the last few weeks.
So what are we looking at, Darwin?
So right now, we were talking about audit, and one of the things that you want to make sure is that your access, you have visibility on what's going on, what actions are being completed against your identities. When, like for example, here, we have our audit for our visitors. Here you have an area audit where you have somebody requested access to that area. So you have a record of when and who requested it, who approved it, when it was approved, to what it was approved. So you want to have that information so that you can go back and understand, okay, who approved this, if something goes wrong, or making sure that it doesn't have to be something that nefarious. It could be something that help you understand, okay, why this person did not get their access on time. Going back to making that user experience with the least amount of friction possible. And you can also have your reporting function. So from your reports, you can have a pre-canned reports that going back to that 10% checks. You can have your reports at the ready that you can request, so that you can present it to an auditor on a ad hoc basis. So another thing, one that brings up a really good point in the use of the watch list. As we were used to the bad connotations, but also think about it. You can use your watch list for VIPs, or in the case, like let's say that you're subjects of some type of government audit, you can add your auditors and flag them so that your compliance office or specific individuals get notified that, hey, this person is coming or this person is here. So you can make sure that you also reduce your risk by having the personnel that has the knowledge of the controls and can provide information and know where to find it. So, the auditor can do the most efficient way. Because at the end of the day, I love my auditor friends, but I want them at the door as soon as possible with the least amount of findings. Exactly. And if I can help them do their job, there's nothing nefarious around here. If I'm prepared to help them do their job, I can get them out the door as soon as possible, and we can get back to the business.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's also interesting, because then they are living the controls that you have put in place, and they're actually seeing it real time, which is kind of an interesting concept. The other thing, never mind, I completely spaced again. You made me think about, though, is also kind of multi-level approvals. So seeing those workflows and setting up those workflows, which will be helpful. Again, it's not always for nefarious purposes. It's accountability. It's making sure that someone doesn't just misremember something. A lot of our customers are going to have those precious areas where you can't really have too many people going without escort, so that they can adhere to some sort of financial reporting type compliance. You can't have people that can access an area that might have sensitive information. So these types of reports, these types of approvals, I think are important for that. It's not just about keeping out bad guys. It's, good accountability.
Good accountability and an experience with reduced friction. You want to make sure that your visitors, your employees, your contractors, they have the required access on a timely basis. Because let's say that you have a very expensive consultant that is sitting around waiting for a badge to let them do their work, do their interviews, or get to their work area. That is what you want to make sure that you have that experience, that friction, reduce that friction, and making sure that you are as efficient as possible with your audits, and making sure that your environment is has good hygiene, and also it makes it easier for people to apply the controls properly. Why? Because you have the guardrails using technology to allow the controls be less of a chore and more of a something that can be done in a timely basis without having to it be too overwhelming on your operator.
Yeah, you know what your next step is instead of having to figure it out along the way. I think one of the things you just mentioned, Darwin, is pretty important also when you're thinking about business value, things like audits, things like integrations. One of the things I often hear in a previous life, we would talk about reports and what to automate, and workflows, and you want to think about the things that are painful persistently. So you don't want to just do something, this will save me 5 minutes once a year. That doesn't really provide the value. It's the things that you're doing all the time that can add up, or it's the things that grind the entire business to a halt should an audit come in and everyone's being disruptive. So just another thing to think about when you're considering the value. Same would apply for an integration, really.
It's just one of those things where you want to be able to do things that if you had to do it manually, there's no way you can.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you need that force multiplier through technology to be able to get a hold of your environment and apply those controls in a way that makes sense for your organization, that you are able to get that value, that without having distractions. We take out the noise and we let the organization focus on what they need to do to be more secure and have control over their environment.
Yep. I think those are fantastic final thoughts. Janette, you want to take us away? Tell us what you're up to, as they say on Hot Ones when he's done with his interview. Tell us what you're up to.
Well, I have a passion for the healthcare vertical market. So just thinking about that, looking at a lot of the different topics that we've discussed today and how that impacts them. And again, why screenings are important, and just looking at lessons learned. The more friction you put in front of patients and the relatives, the more violence, neglect acts, lead to other risks within that environment. So eliminating that from the get-go by knowing who's coming in and out of the facilities, who granted them that access, eliminates all of that. So tying that back really to any organization and being able to vet all of that ahead of time.
Yeah, I think that's a good parting note. Friction is something that people will figure out how to work around. In the case of healthcare, it's often resulting in violence. In the case of an enterprise, it'll often be a workaround that you don't want. So things to think about, things to ponder. Okay, well, Janette, you are off the hook for the next couple of these. I appreciate the time we spent together. It's been a lot of fun. Darwin, as always, enjoy our time. We've done 3 of these with Janette. The first one was on enterprise visitor management. Second one was around access control and kind of moving beyond access control with PIM. And then today's integration, risk, audit, these topics, while they feel maybe independent of each other, can be very interconnected, which is the world that a lot of enterprises are now finding themselves in. Enterprises, government entities, hospitals, and interconnectedness thanks to modern work and technology. So we will pick up shortly in the future with Darwin and a TBD guest, and I look forward to seeing everyone again on the next installment. Thank you both.
Take care.
Yeah, thank you both as well. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Have a good afternoon.
See y'all.
Bye-bye.